Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new version of Pop-Up PD, Schoology Edition. So I'm here with Brian and Dylan, and we are prepared to talk to you today about Schoology Discussions, which is one of the most powerful elements of Schoology. Guys, you want to add anything about, what do you like discussions? Do you think they're, what do you think before we get started?
I think discussions is a great feature just to get, kids talking. It's a good conversation starter, a great way to introduce a topic. But as Heather is going to go over, there's a lot of different things that you can, add to a discussion, like videos and embedding things really to kind of, spark a discussion amongst kids. And I like that they can respond to one another. And it's just a nice way to kind of have that kind of communication inside of a course about a topic that you're teaching.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add to that. I feel like this is a feature that people have been clamoring for in Google Classroom. We've had teachers reach out about back channeling apps, and a lot of teachers using Flipgrid. So this is just another avenue that's built in natively to Schoology that I think a lot of secondary teachers are going to find very valuable, especially if we're in a case like we are now, where you're not able to be face-to-face. So I think this is going to be a heavily used tool in secondary to get kids communicating, not just through video, but also through text.
That's great. Thank you, guys. So with that intro, let's get started. Here are the things we're going to talk about with discussions today. First of all, what is an online discussion? You heard Dylan and Brian weigh in on that. This is a great native feature in Schoology. And then we're going to jump into how do you build an online discussion in Schoology? Where can you build it from? What are the different things you can do? And then once you have it built and you have students responding, how do you review those online discussions in Schoology? There are some really quick, easy ways for you to see who responded, how many posts they made, and to review things. And then finally, we just want to touch on some tips to make online discussions a really powerful instructional tool. Online discussions have been around for quite some time, but sometimes they can leave a little to be desired. So we want to encourage you to do them in a great way so that you get a lot back from your students inside discussions. So we'll end by talking about those things. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to Schoology, and I want to start by going to a course that Brian created, which is just called a test course. And he created this course so that we could, in fact, do some different demonstrating of different things. So you'll see we're inside of Brian's test course here, section 1, and I actually made a folder at the bottom. Keep in mind, this is an example of not good organization inside your Schoology course. Things are haphazardly thrown everywhere. Your courses, I'm sure, will be much better organized than this. But I did make a folder that's here at the bottom called Let's Make a Discussion. And inside that folder, I've already created a discussion. This is what the discussion will look like. You see the icon here. And I titled it Question of the Day. So what is your experience with using Bloom's taxonomy as you prepare questions for students? I thought it would be good for us to keep in the forefront. The discussion's only going to be as good as the questions you ask. So you want to keep those things in mind. You'll also notice I put here, post your initial thoughts by Wednesday. And after Wednesday, check back and select 2 of your classmates, blah, blah, blah. So how the heck did I make this discussion? Well, I began by going up here to add materials, clicking the drop-down arrow, and coming down here to add discussion. That's all I had to do. Once I clicked on that, and because I've already created it, I'm going to go over here to the wheel and hit edit. And this is exactly where it will take me when I first create the discussion. So you'll see now where those different parts of what was posted belong. The title goes at the top. You could very easily put a question right here in the title, but we really encourage you to use the description section to add different elements to really clarify what you want students to do. The more you put here, the less they will assume. So you'll notice that the discussion area of Schoology has these great this great formatting bar at the top where you can make things bold and italicize. You can bullet. You'll notice I put some of those in here so that the question itself pops out, and then what students are to do follow right underneath there. So I've tried to really be clear with what they should do. You have other formatting elements here, but one of the really powerful things is this little button here where you can insert content. You're going to notice here under Bloom's taxonomy, I've inserted a link so that as students do the discussion, they can reference Bloom's taxonomy. So all I did was go to this insert content button. And this is a button you're going to see in many different elements that you add to Schoology. It's here in discussions. Brian, help me out. What other elements do you find the insert content button?
One of the big places that you probably have already learned about it, we talk about it a little bit in the initial 3-hour course with pages. That's a great way to build pages, and you learn a little bit about that, but you have those same options here that Heather's going to talk about in terms of, embedding content, pulling from, some different resources, and just kind of making it a little bit more than just a prompt. So, having kids watch a video and then answer a question, and, Heather's obviously going to go through some of that.
Yeah, so in this example, I used the insert link button. So what I did is this link here actually takes you out to a site here for Vanderbilt that has Bloom's taxonomy and has some question stems so that you could really think about the questions you're going to post and how they relate to the taxonomy. So all I did over here in Schoology is I copied the link from the Vanderbilt site. I went over here to insert content and I clicked link and I pasted the URL link inside of there, okay, to make that highlight. And so I think that's a pretty great way to put a resource right there for students to review before they answer a question. So keep in mind that is here and can be very powerful. You notice Brian mentioned YouTube videos, or you can actually pull things right out of your Google Drive to reference. So let's say you have made a Google Doc or made a Google slideshow that has specific content for your students that you want them to reference in answering a question. Put it right there for them. It will make it you'll get a lot more, I'd say, engagement when you simplify that for students. Again, I want you to notice down here under the bullets, it's really important to explain to students what they should post and when. Okay, often with online discussions, they can post a single answer to the discussion, but the power really is in students responding to students. So be very clear about telling them when they should put their initial post up and when they should respond, and to how many people. You'll notice here I said after Wednesday, check back and select 2 of your classmates' posts and respond by the due date below. The due date down here, I would recommend you set the due date for whenever you want all the posting to be complete, not just the initial post. Okay, maybe it's a question that you're only going to have an initial post. That's fine to do for the first one till you see how it operates. But I think you're going to find that the students responding to each other is going to be powerful. So this due date should always be for the very final. I also want you to notice I put a link down here as well. While you can insert content from up above right into the description, down here you have other powerful tools. Again, these are elements that you find in other areas of Schoology, like building pages, which Brian referenced. But you can attach files here. You can add links here. You can actually pull from your other resources. So being that Dylan and Brian and I have been building all of this inside a group that we created, I can reach back into my EPSD Tech Integrators group and I can go into any of our resources and pull things that I want to connect here. So that's the power of understanding the difference between your groups and your courses and your resources. They are all connected, and you can very easily reach back to a group or a resource and put it into your course. So that's another powerful thing you want to make sure that you leverage. The other cool thing you can do is you can add audio or video recordings. You can record them right here, and you can even put external links, external tools connected. So those of you using things like Edpuzzle, you can again link it right down below. Anything from this bottom bar is going to end up down here, not necessarily embedded up here. If you want it embedded in the description, you're going to have to use the insert content button up top. Okay. Now, one of the most powerful things, I'm going to hop over grading for now. I would not recommend enabling grading the very first couple of times, but you can in fact do that down the road. Okay. We'll get into that later on. But I'm going to hop down here to options. And just like in other elements of Schoology, you can individually design discussions. So if you have students working in different groups and you have different question stems for different groups, you can assign a discussion to just certain students. The other things I want to talk about are locking and publishing. And understanding these, I myself had to wrap my brain around this. Publishing is going to mean the students can actually see it in their Schoology course. Okay, if I click this button, I can unpublish it. I can build it before I actually reveal it to students. But one of the things you may want to think about is actually publishing it to students so they can review it and see what they're supposed to do, but leaving it locked so that they cannot respond to it until a certain time. So right now, I'm going to click the lock now. Uh-oh, there we go. So now I have options between lock on, lock now, or unlock. Okay, so that's something that you wanna consider as well. Okay, locking versus publishing. And then I'm going to tell you perhaps the most powerful thing about discussions. And as Brian and Dylan and I were talking before, this seems to be everybody's favorite feature of discussions, is that you have two options in this last little button here. Require your members to post before revealing other responses is one of the most powerful things. So how many of us perhaps have taken a grad course? And I know I've done this as well. There's a discussion post up, and I wait to see what everybody else posts first. And then I model my post based on what everybody else posted. And then the posts become redundant, and there's really no value added. So this little feature, when you toggle it on, it will gray out everybody's responses until the student puts their initial post up. Once they post their initial post, then the other posts will be revealed. And you notice if I click these little people, you can say that members can see other responses before participating, but I, 9 times out of 10, would likely require them to post before revealing the other responses. Brian and Dylan, do you guys want to weigh in on that at all, or how you've used that?
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to talk
That's
over
okay.
Dylan. No, just kind of reiterating what Heather said is it's a really nice way to kind of add value and have everyone really, make sure that they're engaged in the discussion, not that they're just, paraphrasing or reading what everyone else had done. So it's really nice that it grays that out. They can still see the prompt, they can respond to it, but they cannot see what anyone else wrote until that point. So it's definitely something to think about. And there's another option as well when you're making this. It's not showing up on Heather's screen. We'll have to come back to that. One thing we forgot to add is called a shared discussion, which we can talk about, that you can also join a discussion from someone else's class, which is really nice.
Oh, okay. Well, how about what I would like to do, Dylan, did you have anything to add before I save these changes?
Yeah, I was just gonna say this works really well in a classroom like a math classroom where you're posing an online word problem, multi-step word problem that you want kids to solve, but you don't want them to know the answer that what everybody else is putting first. So I feel like in that setting, this is absolutely perfect for that, where they can go in, they can solve the problem, and then they can see what everyone else wrote, and see where they're at. So I mean, that's just one example. There's many examples that teachers are going to find out where this fits and where it might not fit. Something like a parking lot, it might not fit in that, because you want everybody to see the responses all the time, but other times you don't want them. So it's great that Schoology has this built in and this option available for us.
Great. So now we're going to show you actually what it looks like. I'm going to save these changes. And what I'm going to ask Brian and Dylan to do right now, if I open the question up, I'm going to ask them to actually go in and respond. So now that I've opened the question up, you'll see the due date here is published, what I have here published. These are all the things you saw me creating. And you'll see that Brian has gone on, and here is how a sample response would look like. Students can use the entire space to type a thorough response. Oh my gosh, Brian, you were able to add a link in there? Really?
Yeah, so that was one of the things I wanted to mention when you get to that point, which is really nice. They can also attach things to it to kind of, drive home their response or answer, have supporting, documents or things like that to go along with it. Oh my
God. You know what? I was just thinking about like text dependent analysis questions. Like for the teachers who are doing something like that, they could have students actually post their evidence here as well. Yeah. How did you do that? If I was going to write a comment, would I be able to click in here? Is this how you did it, Brian? Can you talk me through this?
Yeah. So how Heather's going to write a comment, she could act also like the student. And that's exactly the same screen that I saw. It's that same, kind of text editor with those same types of options. Students would also have the ability to insert content. But what I did underneath, right above the word post and cancel, is students then have that same option that teachers did in terms of adding a link, adding something from their resources, recording their voice. But what I have seen students use a lot is the middle two, the link and the resources. So think of link, it could be a website, it could be they're they're answering the prompt, but then they're linking to a video that they made or something they made, on a website, pulling from their resources. But one of the bigger ones is taking a shareable link of a Google Doc or Google Slide and attaching it to their response, which is really nice. Or if they've recorded a screencast of themselves teaching a topic like Dylan was mentioning, math, they could attach their screencast to it, and then they could type up their thought process behind it. So there's a lot of kind of value in those couple options to attach to their responses.
I do think it's really... Go ahead, Dylan.
I was going to say, I'll add to that what I just noticed, and this might be big for students with Chromebooks, is when I went to record video and audio, it told me I needed the Flash player to do so. So I don't know, Heather, if it gives you the same thing, but it would not let me record. Now I'm on the Mac, so it should. But when I clicked on video, audio, okay, so that's what I get. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on and be aware of, that if we're asking students to respond, either audio or video, that it might not work. Brian, I don't know what your experience is with that.
Yeah, that was one of the things that as Flash just kind of transitioned out, and same thing with Java and things like that. That's one of the things that they've been working on to create that embedded audio and video player. And I know that was something that was on their roadmap. So something we have used in the past, but something that they are working on getting changed and things like that. But again, if that's something you want to do, you could have kids respond in Flipgrid or somewhere else, record their voice, and just attach it as a file, a link, or a resource.
Yeah, definitely something to evolve to. And again, as you start using discussions, I would encourage you to start small. Have kids attach a link or have them attach a resource that they have created to share. This is a great way for them to share it with you, but also to share it with their classmates as well, which has been, difficult in the tools we've used in the past. So now what's really interesting, I wanted you to be able to see this, how students will in fact post and the options they will have. But as the teacher and the sort of monitor of this discussion, I have this great feature down here that enables me to highlight the users. So if I click the drop-down arrow, I'm going to see not only myself, but the two students who are in the class, both Brian and Dylan, and it's automatically going to tell me that Brian made a post. Dylan, you're a little slow over there. Are you posting? You didn't turn yours in yet.
You have to
Oh, I
refresh your
posted.
page. Refresh your page.
Yeah, I posted.
Oh, I have to refresh my page? Sorry. Okay, well, that's a really good thing to know. Make sure that if you're looking for students to have their posts put in, that you refresh your page. Okay, so I'd love to say I did that by accident, right? I did that deliberately. So now, highlight user, what I like about this feature is I'm going to automatically see that Brian has not only done his initial post, but he has 2 posts up. So, one of the things when I monitor online discussions, just in terms of making sure there's a completion rate, I have to go through and I have to do that myself sometimes. In Schoology, it does it for me automatically. So I can see, well, if I wanted 1 initial post and 2 responses, everybody better have a 3 behind their name.
Yeah, and one thing to point out is that number in parentheses. So I've made 2 posts, and you can see below where it says, Dylan has his response. The nice thing is that it kind of creates its own separate conversation that would indent. I know Heather's going to mention that, but the number behind my number 2 is I had my initial post. That number 1 means that it is unread. So if you look right above where her mouse is, it says 3 posts, and then it has a little icon in orange with a 1. It's an unread post. So until she would scroll down and physically go over, and you can see on the bottom where it says great response, Dylan, it has an orange bar on the far right. That kind of demonstrates that it's unread. So once Heather would kind of go through that, click on it and kind of make
This
sure that
orange
was read.
bar over here.
Yes, that kind of designates that it was unread.
So it won't go away until I click on that?
You should be able to,
Whoops.
now that you went into it, you should be able to refresh, and it might now because you went to a different page. Yep, see,
Okay.
now it's gone. So
Now
you
it's
pretty
gone.
much have to scroll your mouse over it or scroll through it just to kind of demonstrate that it's been read. But that's what that second one will be.
Now, Brian, here's a question for you because I don't understand this yet. If I hit reply to your post, is everybody seeing that or are just you seeing that?
Everybody will see that.
Everybody will see that. Is there a way in this online discussion for me as the teacher to respond privately to the student, or is that not possible in this tool?
With my knowledge, I don't think there is a way to do that.
Okay, so that's an important feature. That's an important thing for teachers to note. You're not going to be able to use this tool to give individual private feedback to students. The replies that you post here and the comments that you make are going to go out to all students. Okay. So I could, in fact, reply here, great job. Now, here's the problem with replying with great job. One of the things you want to be careful of and you want to encourage with your students, we've mentioned the word value added response. What you don't want is to have your students doing what Brian and I just did here by saying, great response, good job, and thinking that that's enough for an online discussion. You really want to encourage them to add value so that their response should answer a question that the previous post asked or make a direct connection to the previous post. So that, make certain as you post your descriptions up here, you talk about that and you're very clear with students. That will improve what you get back from students in online discussions. Okay. Brian, have I forgotten to show anything? I want to, as you think about that, I want to hop back to our initial slide. We've talked a lot about what online discussions are, how to build them in Schoology. One thing to note, I was building inside of a course, but discussions can in fact be built inside groups, even though they're in template form, and they can be built in your resources ahead of time and then pulled into your courses.
One thing I'll mention that is, again, it's best practice to build things in resources and push them to your course. But if you would, by chance create your discussion and at the end of the year, let's say you want to save it so that you have that same discussion for the next year. The nice thing about that is, let's say you did it with 5 classes and you had 120 kids respond. Those responses will not follow with it, just the structure of the discussion and the template will. Which is really nice. So you don't have to go in there and worry about student responses from previous years. It will automatically wipe those and leave them in the archive section of that class. So Again,
Okay.
best practice to create it in resources, but if you create it in courses and then save it to your resources, it will not carry the student's information with you, which is really a nice time saver.
So Brian, this is a really good spot to talk about shared discussions. Do you mind explaining that and how you would create a discussion and share it amongst your courses? Because am I correct in saying that you could keep a discussion just within, say, one period of a course,
Mhm.
or you could open that discussion? Let's say I teach CP, English 10 CP, and I have 3 sections of it. Could I open that discussion to all 3 sections?
Yes, you could.
How would I do that?
So if we're gonna go back to materials,
Okay.
and if we forgot to do this before, so if you just click on materials, once you create the discussion and you go to edit it, it's not there. So we forgot to do it. So if you go back
Ah,
to add materials and we're just
gotcha.
going to add a discussion, I'm just
Gotcha.
going to show where the button is and
Mhm.
then how you would do that.
So
So
if you don't do it at the onset, that's something you can't go back and redo.
correct.
Gotcha.
So on those options that Heather talked about on the very bottom, so the one next to the guy that looks like a little graduation hat, we talked about being a great feature about getting kids to respond and seeing it grayed out before they make their own response. That one that Heather's hovering over right now, it looks like the shared, kind of universal shared icon. So if she would click on that, she could then share it with other courses. So not only just ones that she is a part of, but then she could share that with somebody else. So the nice thing is she would be able to select who she wanted. She could password protect it if she wanted to. And then you would create the discussion just as you normally would. And then what you would do to find that, if you hit cancel, Heather,
Mhm.
and then right up at the top where it says all materials,
Yep.
to the right, in about the
Options.
center of your screen, keep going to the right, it says all materials in blue.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
So if you can use this as a filtered view. So what you can do is you can see all the different types of materials you might have in your class. But if she clicks on discussions, it
Oh,
will filter out
wow.
her discussions that she has. So think about, let's say it becomes January and you've already done 5 or 6 discussions, but you don't remember what folder it's in. You can see the colored folders on the right, but it will also kind of filter those out. And the only other thing that it adds now is that options button at the top.
This one?
Yep. It says the second one down says join shared discussion. Each discussion has their own code or a password that I mentioned. So if she would click that, she would be able to type that code in for that specific discussion and basically link the courses she wants to, or the other classes she wants to include in that single discussion. So I've used that in the past. It's great to get kids from the same type of class, but different periods, different perspectives, to kind of talk and, engage with one another.
Wow, that's super powerful and something we have not had the power to do with the tools we've used. That's really neat. So,
And
go ahead, Brian.
no, I was just going to say, we'll link some information to that one specifically on that original Google slide.
Yes. So if I go back to the original Google slide, we can certainly add this. I'll add it in right now, and then we'll add some resources there so you don't forget that shared discussions are in fact possible. We talked about reviewing your discussions and, highlighting users. And then please keep in mind, as we bring this to a close here, I'm almost out of time. The discussion is only going to be as good as you make it. So really think about using some of those higher order questions, setting deadlines for an initial post, setting secondary deadlines for responses, only accepting responses that add value. You don't have time to look through 25 responses that say great job. So be very deliberate when you are creating those discussions and all those tips. Use the bullets, use all those different areas, link resources in there so that your students have those resources at their fingertips. That's going to make them more successful, and I think you're going to be happier with the result you get because you will have higher rates of engagement if you lay it out for them very clearly. That is about all I have about online discussions. Dylan and Brian, see, do you hear that? That's my timer. Is there anything else that I've neglected to mention that you feel is important?
No, I don't. I think you went very thoroughly through. I think everything was great. And the one thing I will say is I know a lot of teachers always say, well, how can students share out projects to each other? They created a wee video, they created a presentation that they want to share. I think discussions are a great avenue for them to share projects and put in like a little bit
Yeah.
of information about that project and share that link. Like you showed how to share in a resource or right from your Google Drive. I think this is a great way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think once teachers start using discussions, they will see the power in using them for different purposes, not just an online discussion.
Yeah,
Brian, any
the only other
thoughts?
the only other thing I wanted to add was kind of what Heather mentioned about, when students are responding. When we first used this in my experience and we had kids responding, we were absolutely amazed to see the types of responses kids were giving, not only as an initial prompt, but then also as a response to another student saying like, I agree. However, just really giving that value added and, just their own 2 cents. And it was interesting to see them not only, accepting feedback from a teacher, but giving feedback to their peers. So you'll be truly amazed at how much they actually write, versus if you said, hey, give someone a response on, a piece of paper. It's amazing what they actually type out and kind of take the time to give them feedback on.
Yeah. Brian, I think you're so right about that. My experience in using discussions, I am always floored by students who perhaps don't have as much voice in a live setting in a group, and the very thought-provoking things that they will post on a discussion board. So students who are perhaps shy, it's really amazing. You almost get to know students in a deeper way by reading what they post here. So I agreed. I think it's super powerful. That is all we have for you today for online discussions. Please make sure to check the assignment below so that you would now go ahead in and you would practice creating some online discussions. We want to give you a little bit of time to do that. But also please know that the three of us will be available next year as you begin to create discussions in Schoology and use it. We're happy to help you do that. Okay, thanks for tuning in and good luck making online discussions with Schoology. Bye, everybody.